Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Read Em. My name is Emily, and today we'll be finding out if Josh Malerman is officially a favorite author. If you're unfamiliar with me and my channel, first of all, welcome. But second of all, I need you to know one thing, and that is that I love Josh Malerman. I've read House at the Bottom of the Lake by him and given it 5 stars. This was really the beginning of my weird horror journey, so it's very important to the trajectory of my entire reading life. And then after that, I read Daphne, which I gave 4.5 stars and really loved. This book is also really special to me because it is actually a book idea that I had and wished I could write, but never quite got to. And then Josh Malerman had this idea as well and wrote the perfect version of it. This follows a girls' basketball team that is kind of being stalked by this entity called Daphne, and the only way that she can attack you is if you think about her. So, you know, obviously it's kind of a metaphor for anxiety and not being able to control your own thoughts, and it's a wonderful novel. And then we have A House at the Bottom of the Lake, which is more normal in the beginning than something like this that is pure horror, but it gets very weird and strange. It's essentially about 2 teenagers who decide to go on a date to this like closed off lake in their local town. And when they go there, they discover a house at the bottom of the lake and they decide to explore it together. And they explore other things together. It just gets really weird. That is all I'm gonna say about that. I do really want to reread this one day as well, but not for this video because I have a lot going on here, because in the past few weeks, Incidents Around the House, Josh Malerman's new book, has finally come out and I'm very excited to read it. This one, from what I understand, is some sort of like possession or creature story, and it follows a young child main character, which I always think is interesting in horror. Funny story about this, I also accidentally bought 2 copies, so I better like it. And last but not least is the book that you're all thinking about when you hear Josh Malerman. Unless you don't know who he is, then you don't realize that he actually wrote Bird Box, which was that super popular Netflix movie that came out a few years ago that I think was one of Netflix's like first original movies that became really popular. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I never watched it back then, so I don't know what this is about other than there's blindfolds, and I think Machine Gun Kelly's in the movie, which is weird. And I decided I'm gonna read this one last because I kind of like reading an author's most popular book at the end, because I feel like expectations become very high and I feel like that means it may be disappointing. So I don't want that to be the first one for this video. So I'm going to start with the new bright and shiny Incidents Around the House, and I'll be sure to update you guys with what I think. So I originally planned on giving this update halfway through reading this book, but I accidentally read the entire thing. And I feel that that may be an indication as to how much I enjoyed it. What you did see in that last clip was me having a little reading party with a friend and reading a solid chunk of this. But what you didn't see was the horrible but also kind of amazing decision to sleep in a tent outdoors in a storm immediately after finishing. Now, why was that such a horrible decision, besides the storm part, you may ask? Well, this book was terrifying. When it really comes down to it, the story of this novel is very simple. It is simply about a young girl who sees some sort of being in her closet, and the being asks her, "Can I go inside of your heart?" From there, it just kind of becomes the typical possession type story, but with the slight twist that it's from the perspective of a child who's also kind of dealing with this like familial politics game between her parents. And the ways in which the whole possession storyline combines with that creates something a little bit more special and exciting. And even though the final outcome of this ends up being like semi-predictable, I think the way that the creature is utilized makes this a bit more special. And also the way that the creature is portrayed physically on page. Because as I was saying, this thing is terrifying. And not just because of possession. I think that possession is obviously a scary thing. It's not like my top horror trope or anything, but the creature in this book is always described slightly differently. It's always vague, it's always malleable, and that's what Josh Malerman does so well. He did it also with Daphne, and he did it again here, I would say maybe even better. Daphne, I always think about the description of like a deflated Halloween mask like rolled up on the floor. And in this book, I think about thinking that the creature is hanging upside down and then realizing that no, she's not upside down, that's just how her face is. I feel bad that I don't really have like too much I want to say about this, but the reality is that it's kind of a simple, thrilling, book. And I don't want to give you too much before going into it, because I think if you like Josh Malerman or you like possession or creature stories and horror, you will probably enjoy this. And the writing style is super easy to read because it's coming from that child's perspective and has huge margins, so you can completely blast through this thing in like 2 days, which I think would make it really good for like a readathon if anyone wants to do it for like summer week next year or something. All that being said, my final rating for this is a solid 4.5 stars. It didn't quite get to a point of 5 stars because I don't really think it's completely unique or did anything completely mind-blowing, but I had a great time and could not put it down. So that means I now have Josh Malerman sitting at a 5-star and 2 4.5 stars. Going into his most popular book to read next, Bird Box. I don't know what this one has in store for me. I feel like maybe it's a bad omen that this is his most popular book, because I feel like the popular book is always like a little underwhelming because you're expecting such high things. I think it's like kind of dystopian and less straight up horror, so I'm not sure if it's gonna be like my ultimate favorite thing, and I'm assuming it's less weird than this one, so I don't know. I'm gonna try to keep my expectations average and see where this brings me. Hey, recording. Okay, should I spin?
Yeah.
Wait, I'm stuck.
Go in.
Okay, we're good.
That is so loud.
Once again, I have failed to update at the halfway point, but you know what, that's okay because I also flew through this one. Before I reveal exactly what I think about this, I just want to say that I went to New Hope, Pennsylvania the other day and visited an independent bookstore because that's my favorite thing to do in the entire world, and they gave me this adorable bookmark, which I'm kind of obsessed with. The store is called Farley's Bookshop, by the way, and I bought what you guys are getting very excited about. I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, and the person who was working there was really enthusiastic and into this, and he whipped out the New York Times book review from like that week and was like, oh my god, they just interviewed Stephen Graham Jones in the New York Times this week, what's happening? The New York Times is actually respecting horror, the tides are turning. And I was like, wow, that is very exciting, and we just had a little conversation and it was great, and I cannot wait to read this because I didn't even know what this was about, but I just opened it up to the first page and it was written in like a web entry format from a Teenage Voice, and I mean that makes sense given the title, you know, I have to admit that now that I'm putting that together. But new Stephen Graham Jones, I'm so excited. I'm probably hopefully gonna read this somewhat soon, maybe for Kayla's Literally Dead book club month. I don't remember what month it is, but it's coming up soon, so keep your eye out for that. Anyway, back to Bird Box. Now, we do have to admit something here. There is a small negative that's happening with my review of this book, and that is that it is 4 stars instead of 5, so it is officially my lowest rated Josh Malerman, but I really did enjoy this. I just think it was less special than his other books, and the ending was really, really stupid. I was right when I said that this is more dystopian than horror, because there are obviously horror elements. It kind of has horror in the same way that A Quiet Place is horror, where it's a dystopian / apocalyptic scenario, but the reason that it's an apocalypse is because of creatures of some kind, and that's what makes it so scary, and because you have to kind of suppress a certain sense. So, you know, A Quiet Place is you can't talk, Bird Box is you can't see. Although I do think Bird Box came out first, so everyone like saying like Bird Box is just like A Quiet Place, whatever, like I'm pretty sure this came out before that. Anyway, that being said, I think the gimmick was fun and interesting to an extent, and the survival elements were thrilling. I also think the way this was structured is what made it special and unique, because we have alternating chapters here. Half of them are from the present timeline of our main character trying to escape her house with her 2 children. Well, they have to be blindfolded because they can't see outside, and they have to like row down this river while blindfolded all the way to somewhere. We don't know where in the beginning, but they're obviously trying to escape. And then we have the past timeline from like before this apocalypse even happened. That gap, you know, makes you wonder, where do these children come from? What happened to all the people that she knew before? Where is she trying to go? Why does she need to leave this house? There's a lot of questions that are answered in a very satisfying way and at a satisfying pace throughout the book because of the structure. And I'm curious to see how they handle that in the film, especially with how much everyone can't see and is blindfolded, because, you know, part of the appeal is that when our main character is blindfolded, we also can't see. But in the film, when the main character will be blindfolded, we can obviously see. So I feel like that would be something that's hard to navigate, and kind of makes me surprised that they chose to adapt this into a film, because it doesn't really seem very conducive to that. And now I do want to briefly mention the ending, because I am astonished, if you will, that no one is talking about that. So please skip ahead to the next clip if you don't want to hear the ending of this book. If you've read it or seen the movie, the endings are the same. And that is that our main character makes it to, you know, the kind of commune that has survived in the apocalypse, and it is actually a school of the blind. I'm gonna let that sink in. Now, there's an inkling of understanding here, of me understanding what he was going for, of the fact that, you know, in some sort of situation where humanity is experiencing like a blight where they lose some sort of sense, there are already people on this earth that have learned to thrive without that sense, and naturally they would thrive more than people who aren't used to it. I understand that. It's interesting to see that like someone who's disabled can then be more accustomed to a different type of world, where our world is built for sighted people, where this future world is built for non-sighted people. That's interesting. I get it. But maybe there could have just been a blind character who demonstrated that, and not like the cheesy like perfectionism blind schoolness. Like, I don't know how to describe why it was so weird to me, but it was just so weird. It was also so sudden. I feel like it's almost a little othering to blind people. It's like also like, why did we not mention them this entire time? And then it's only just like, oh, they saved everything. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it was weird. Like, they weren't real characters. They were just like this entity at the end. So that was like, okay. Anyway, where I really wish this ended was in the moment on the river. Right before she gets to the commune, she realizes that a creature is nearby. The creature like reaches down and like plucks off her blindfold, but doesn't take it off fully, just lets it kind of like linger inches away from her face, and it's like this terrifying moment. And I think it could have been beautiful to kind of just like linger there, and she also kind of ponders in that moment whether or not these creatures truly are nefarious and have evil intentions, or whether this is just some sort of horrible coincidence that is just as bad for them as it is for the humans, where they've kind of just like somehow ended up here and aren't meaning to hurt anyone, but their very existence by nature just happens to be ruining the planet, and it's like also painful for them. Like, that was something so interesting to ponder. A lot more interesting than like, blind people would thrive if no one else could see. Like, I don't know. I wish we ended in the like ambiguous like half-blind space, and not like the picture-perfect bow tie situation. I also think, since we don't get answers about the creature, it would be kind of nice to linger on the vagueness of the creature and not just like forget about that and just like move on in the world and ignore all the creatures. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Anyway, I'm excited now to watch the movie. So I'll see you guys in a bit and tell y'all what I think about that. Okay. That was not it. That was not it. I know we always say, as the book nerds of the internet, that the book was better, but the book was so much better. And I'm not even claiming to have completely loved this book. It was a 4 out of 5, a solid 4. The most 4 that a 4 could be. And yet the movie was just so bad. And I don't understand how that happened, because here's the thing. I remember when the movie came out, it was such a phenomenon. It was like, well, I feel like it was one of the first like Netflix original movies that people really got into, and it like spread like wildfire. Everyone's watching it. Even people I know who don't watch horror, because it was kind of like dystopian. I feel like people who just watched it in general. I don't even remember what year it came out, but like everyone was watching it and everyone liked it. And I'm glad I didn't, because what was that? I'm so glad I waited to read this, because I bet if I watched that first, I would never have read this thing. What if I never read Josh Malerman because of that? Because of what a dumpster fire it was. Oh my god. Okay, I might be overreacting a little bit. I feel like there was obviously like bits and pieces that remained from this which were good. I still think the premise is fun. I think what made this book good was just completely absent from the film, other than the premise. Because you know what? I didn't even talk about this in my review of the book, but the other thing that made this so interesting was the fact that even though the creatures were supposedly the direct threat to humanity in this novel, the humans themselves and their like connection and dynamic is actually what became the most detrimental in here. It's kind of like a Lord of the Fliesy situation. You know, some people turn on each other, some people rely on each other, and trust is really like the main component. The movie version just threw that away because of the structure that they had to do it in. And I understand to an extent why they changed the beginning, because I'm just, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna give full spoilers here for the movie. I'm so sorry, but like I need to make this comparison so you can understand. So if you've seen both or read one or the other and you don't care, keep watching. If you haven't, I'm so sorry, you're gonna have to skip to the end. The way that this book opens is the same as the very beginning of the movie, with the woman rowing out on the river. However, the flashback in this, the past timeline, starts before the whole apocalypse begins. So I understand why they had to change kind of the very beginning of this, or at least chose to, because in the past timeline of the beginning of this book, we find out about the looming apocalypse through news reports on TV, which would be kind of like a weird way to watch something in a movie, to like watch news within a movie like over and over again would become very repetitive and strange, versus in a book it's kind of just like mentioned as background noise. In the movie version, however, they choose to have the inaugural news report happen in the presence of the main character. So the main character is at the hospital where the first like suicidal breakout apocalypse thing happens in America. And so that was a more exciting beginning for a film, and I understand why they chose to do that. However, that also meant that the main character became trapped in the house with all of the people from this, which probably happens like at least a third of the way through this book instantly. And there's no like dynamics of people coming, joining later, and like other people having to leave. And like the way that this happens at such like a deliberate pace is just not maintained at all in the film. There are also pointless characters added in, and characters really changed to be more and or less important because there was too many to deal with in such a short amount of time, which I kind of understand, but why did we add some then? And then it created like this weird unnecessary side romance. It just got rid of like one character's actual personality in order for him to be like a side romance, which was Machine Gun Kelly, by the way. Like, what was that decision? I don't know what was going on there. And we also need to talk about, in the beginning of this movie, they made the main character's sister a horse girl for literally no reason. I just know that a horse girl was in that writing room and said, Sarah Paulson, you are gonna be a horse girl. That's your entire personality. You will only talk about horses. And then there's like one horse in like the beginning of the apocalypse scene, which makes the main character sad because her sister just died in front of her. It's like that was the reason for the horses. So you could just see a horse running and it would remind you of your sister. In this book, we have a nice little like backstory anecdote about like the clouds that reminds her of her sister that keeps recurring throughout the whole book, not just like a random horse not even a third, like 2 seconds into the movie. I can't with the horse thing. And even in this, the like cloud anecdote seemed a little random, but the horse thing was a whole other level. There was also a lot of like huge time jumps because of how it was restructured, and it did not flow anywhere near as well, and was just very rushed and like compacted, and all the characters kind of blended together instead of being very distinct as they were in here. And also another issue that the movie had, which I don't think was like an inherent issue of the medium of film, because in this book there are moments when other characters leave the house and go on like quests and adventures to try to like find materials and stuff, but we get to like follow them later from their perspective in those chapters because our main character doesn't, see what happened to them, so she doesn't find out until they've returned. So you get like a delayed gratification on that. But like in the film, for some reason, they are still very attached to like only following the main character, which like I feel like in movies you don't really have to do as much, but they did anyway. So then our main character like had to go on these trips and expeditions when like, why would they send the pregnant woman to do that? I don't really know. It like didn't make sense. I gave the movie I gave the movie 2 stars, but then I bumped it to 2.5 because then I thought about like some other movies I've given 2 stars, and then I was like, well, okay, I can't give it that bad. Anyway, the more I talk about it though, it was not good. It was not good. It was kind of boring. This book was not boring. This book had very interesting dynamics, and the plot twist at the end was so much more well executed in this than the other one. The finale, the climax in this was like perfectly placed, perfectly done. They moved the birth scene so early in the movie, didn't even make it exciting, and they made Tom survive. What was going on? I can't. The more I think about it, they just ruined it. They completely butchered it. They took this book, chopped it into pieces, plopped romance into it, and then spat it back out and made a Netflix film. Anyway, movie, bad. Book, pretty good. Alright, so that wraps up my continuation of Josh Malerman's books, and I'm very happy to report, despite what you just saw, my thoughts about the movie, I really liked these 2 books, so I can officially call Josh Malerman a favorite author because all of his books have been over 4 stars, and I've read 4 of them. And 3 of them are 4.5 or 5, which I feel like is a good indication of whether or not an author is a favorite or not. You may also have noticed that the dust jacket is no longer on incidents around the house, and that's a good sign for me because that means it's going on my permanent bookshelf collection, and I'm not donating it away. And I'm also not donating Bird Box. This one was a solid 4 stars, and I definitely annotated a few pages in here. So I'm going to be keeping this copy for my personal collection. Still yet, nothing has topped the first one I've read by him. This is still my favorite, but I do want to read one day Unburied Carol. He has a lot of other books, actually, that I haven't read. I don't really think any of the other ones interest me particularly, and that does include the sequel to Bird Box called Mallory, which has come out in the past few years. I don't have an interest reading that. I did like this, but as a contained thing. Unburied Carol, on the other hand, does intrigue me. I think that one's more of like a western or like historical fiction than horror, and it's something about like a woman that was buried alive. That's kind of all I know, but that one does appeal to me. So thank you all so much for watching. Please consider liking and commenting for engagement or subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!